My estranged sister returned with smiles and promises, thinking she still had power over me, but this time, she walked into her own trap. You think that once you cut someone toxic out of your life, they disappear forever. Until they show up at your doorstep with sweet smiles and fake apologies, ready to play their final con. My name is Alexander Grayson, and I'm 36 years old. I've spent the better part of the last decade building what I consider to be a decent life. The kind of life that my younger self could only dream about when he was hiding in his bedroom, listening to his parents scream at each other downstairs while his older sister Veronica promised him everything would be okay, that she would always protect him. Those promises, like so many others she would make throughout our lives, turned out to be worth about as much as Confederate currency. I work as a senior software engineer at a fintech company downtown, pulling in a comfortable six-figure salary that I've worked damn hard for. My apartment is a one-bedroom in a converted warehouse building that still smells faintly of the leather goods that were manufactured here in the 1940s. It's got exposed brick walls, hardwood floors that creak in all the right places, and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in enough natural light to grow the small herb garden I keep on the fire escape. The building is full of artists, young professionals, and a few old-timers who've been here since before the neighborhood gentrified. We all nod politely in the hallways and occasionally share coffee in the communal courtyard. For the past 5 years, I've lived in blissful silence without a single word from my older sister Veronica. 5 years of peace, of building genuine friendships with colleagues who appreciate my dry humor and reliability, of dating women who don't try to manipulate me into financing their dreams, of creating a life free from manipulation and emotional blackmail. 5 years of therapy sessions where I learned to recognize gaslighting, boundary violations, and emotional manipulation tactics. 5 years of slowly rebuilding my self-esteem and learning that I didn't owe anyone my time, energy, or money just because we shared DNA. I thought I was safe. I thought she was gone for good. I thought I had finally learned how to spot the warning signs of toxic people and keep them at arm's length. I was wrong. That Tuesday evening started like any other. The October air was crisp enough that I'd opened the windows to let in the smell of dying leaves and distant wood smoke. I was reviewing code on my laptop, debugging a particularly stubborn algorithm that handled cryptocurrency transactions, while enjoying a quiet dinner of takeout Thai food from the place around the corner that knows my order by heart. Pad Thai, medium spice, extra peanuts. The local news was playing softly in the background, reporting on yet another tech startup that had burned through millions of investor dollars before imploding spectacularly. I remember thinking how grateful I was to work for a stable company with actual revenue and realistic business projections. My doorbell rang at exactly 7:43 p.m. I know this because I glanced at my computer clock when the sound interrupted my concentration. I wasn't expecting anyone. My friend Marcus had mentioned possibly stopping by later in the week to borrow my drill, but nothing was scheduled for tonight. Through the peephole, I saw a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair holding a bouquet of white roses. She was wearing an expensive-looking navy blazer that screamed, "I'm a successful businesswoman now," paired with designer jeans that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. It took me a full 10 seconds to recognize her. Veronica looked different. Thinner, more polished, with subtle makeup that highlighted her green eyes and minimized the lines around them. She had our mother's bone structure but our father's stubborn chin. The last time I'd seen her, she was 20 pounds heavier, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and sweatpants, screaming at me through tears of rage and cocaine withdrawal. "Alex?" Her voice was softer than I remembered, almost fragile. "I know you probably don't want to see me, but I really need to talk to you. Please. Just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door. The moment I did, I was hit with a wave of expensive perfume. Something floral and complex that probably cost more per ounce than I spent on lunch. She looked me up and down with those calculating green eyes that I'd inherited from our mother. And for a moment, I was 8 years old again, desperate for my big sister's approval, willing to do anything to make her smile at me the way she smiled at her friends. "You look good," she said, stepping inside without invitation, the way she'd always done throughout our childhood. "Really good. This place is beautiful." She was already scanning my apartment, taking inventory with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to quickly assess what valuables might be lying around. The leather sectional sofa I'd saved up for 6 months to buy. The 65-inch Samsung TV mounted on the exposed brick wall. The framed certificates on the wall from my various programming certifications, and the computer science degree that had taken me 6 years to complete while working full-time. I could practically see the dollar signs reflecting in her pupils. "What do you want, Veronica?" I kept my voice steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a bird trying to escape a cage. My therapist had taught me to recognize this feeling, the way my nervous system responded to perceived threats: fight, flight, or freeze. Right now, I was frozen. She set the flowers on my coffee table with careful precision, moving aside my copy of Clean Code and the coffee mug I'd been drinking from. Then she sat down on my sofa, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. Everything about her movement seemed choreographed, as if she'd rehearsed this entire encounter. "I want to apologize," she said, and on cue, tears began to well up in her eyes. "For everything. For the way I treated you, for the lies, for taking advantage of your kindness all those years ago, for the things I said the last time we spoke, for calling your work and everything else." The tears looked real as far as I could tell. Veronica had always been a gifted actress. "I've changed, Alex. I really have. I've been in therapy, working on myself, building a business. I'm not that person anymore." The person she was referring to was someone who had borrowed $20,000 from me 6 years ago for what she claimed was a sure-thing investment in cryptocurrency, back when Bitcoin was surging and everyone thought they could get rich quick if they just bought enough Dogecoin. The money had disappeared into her cocaine habit and designer handbag collection faster than snow in July. When I confronted her about it, presenting bank statements and transaction records, she'd screamed that I was a selfish brother who didn't care about family, that I was holding her back from success, that I'd always been jealous of her potential. Then she'd disappeared for months, only to reappear at my birthday party uninvited, demanding more money and causing such a scene that 3 of my friends had to physically escort her out of the restaurant. The cycle repeated itself with variations: the desperate late-night phone calls, the promises to pay me back, the sob stories about needing just a little more cash to turn everything around, until I finally said no and meant it. That's when she'd really shown her true colors. She'd unleashed a campaign of harassment that included calling my workplace and telling my boss I was embezzling funds, creating fake social media accounts to spread rumors about me, and even going so far as to contact my ex-girlfriend Sarah to tell her I was secretly gay and had been using her as a cover. The harassment had continued for 3 months until I'd finally gotten a restraining order and hired a lawyer to send her a cease and desist letter. "I know you have every right to hate me," she continued, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue she'd pulled from her purse. "But I've started this incredible business venture, and it's finally giving me the chance to pay back everyone I've hurt, including you, especially you." There it was, the hook. I should have seen it coming from a mile away, but part of me, the part that still remembered building blanket forts with her when we were kids, the part that remembered how she'd held me when I cried after our parents' divorce, wanted to believe she had actually changed. Hope is a dangerous thing when it comes to toxic family members. It makes you stupid. "What kind of business?" I asked, settling into the armchair across from her. I noticed she'd positioned herself so that the light from my floor lamp hit her face at just the right angle, making her look younger and more vulnerable. Her whole demeanor shifted like a switch had been flipped. Suddenly she was animated, gesturing with her hands as she spoke, her eyes bright with what looked like genuine excitement. "Financial education, Alex. I'm helping people break free from the poverty mindset, teaching them how to build generational wealth. You wouldn't believe the testimonials I'm getting. People are literally changing their lives, paying off debt, starting their own businesses, buying their first homes." She pulled out her phone, the latest iPhone I noticed, in a case that looked like it was made of genuine crocodile leather, and showed me a slick website called Prosperity Path Solutions. The design was professional, with soft blues and golds that suggested trust and wealth. Professional photos of diverse, smiling people accompanied testimonials about life-changing results. There were images of happy families in front of nice houses, young entrepreneurs posing with laptops in coffee shops, older couples walking on beaches. But something felt off. The testimonials were generic, using the kind of language you'd find on any get-rich-quick scheme. "This changed my life. I went from broke to 6 figures in just 6 months. The strategies are amazing." And the business address listed at the bottom of the page was a UPS store in a strip mall between a nail salon and a place that sold cell phone accessories. This looks interesting, I said carefully, scrolling through the site. How long have you been running this? 8 months now, and we're expanding rapidly. We started small, just me and a couple of partners, but word of mouth has been incredible. That's actually why I'm here. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with what looked like genuine excitement. I need to bring on additional investors to scale up our training programs, maybe hire some additional coaches, expand our marketing reach. With your background in fintech, you'd understand the opportunity better than anyone. I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach. The same feeling I'd had 6 years ago when she'd first pitched me on her cryptocurrency scheme. What kind of investment are we talking about? $50,000 would give you a 30% stake in the company. Based on our current growth trajectory, you'd see a 300% return within 6 months. Conservative estimate. It could be much higher if we really take off. She paused, reaching across to touch my hand. Alex, I'm offering this to you first because you're family, and because I want to make things right between us. This is my chance to pay you back for everything, with interest. The number hit me like a physical blow. $50,000. More than double what she'd scammed from me before. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was furious. She hadn't changed at all. She'd just gotten better at packaging her lies, like a con artist who'd upgraded from street corners to boardrooms. That's a significant amount, I said, pulling my hand away from hers. I'd need to see your business plan, financial projections, maybe speak with some of your current investors. You understand? Something flickered across her face, annoyance maybe, or fear. But she recovered quickly, the mask sliding back into place. Of course. I totally understand. I'll send you everything by email tonight. Detailed financial statements, client testimonials, our 5-year growth plan, everything. She paused, biting her lip in what I was beginning to recognize as a calculated gesture. But Alex, I need to be honest with you. This opportunity won't be available much longer. I have other family members interested, some wealthy friends from my networking group, and once we reach our funding goal, we'll be closed to new investors. The pressure tactics. Classic Veronica, create urgency, manufacture scarcity, make the mark feel special and chosen. I'd seen her use these same techniques on our parents, on boyfriends, on anyone she thought might have something she wanted. I appreciate you thinking of me, I said, standing up. Let me review the materials and we can talk again next week. She stood too, and for a moment I thought she might argue. Instead, she smiled and pulled me into a hug that felt as artificial as everything else about her new persona. She was wearing a different perfume than I remembered. Something expensive and sophisticated instead of the drugstore body spray she used to douse herself with. Thank you for giving me a chance, little brother. This is going to change everything for both of us. After she left, I sat in my apartment feeling nauseated. The white roses she'd brought seemed to mock me from their place on my coffee table, their petals already beginning to wilt around the edges. I wanted to believe she had changed, wanted to think that people could genuinely transform themselves after hitting rock bottom. But I'd learned too much about Veronica's patterns over the past 36 years to ignore the red flags that were popping up like dandelions in spring. I opened my laptop and started digging. The first thing I noticed was that the domain for Prosperity Path Solutions had been registered only 3 months ago, not 8 as she'd claimed. The business license was legitimate but recent, filed in Delaware. A common choice for companies that wanted to obscure their actual operations or take advantage of business-friendly tax laws. I reverse-searched the testimonial photos on her website. Stock photos, every single one of them. The success stories were lifted word for word from other financial coaching websites, dating back several years. Even the supposed client names were fake. I found the same testimonials attributed to different people on different sites across the internet. The deeper I dug, the clearer the picture became. Prosperity Path Solutions wasn't a business. It was a pyramid scheme with a financial education veneer. Participants paid thousands of dollars for training packages that consisted of recycled information you could find for free on any personal finance blog, and were then encouraged to recruit others to do the same. The only people making money were those at the top of the pyramid, collecting recruitment fees from everyone below them. My phone buzzed with a text from Veronica. Had such a great time tonight. Here's the info packet I promised. Can't wait to have you on the team. I downloaded the attachment with a sense of dread. 27 pages of professional-looking documents that, upon closer inspection, contained absolutely no substance. Vague promises about leveraging market inefficiencies and optimizing capital flow dynamics. Lots of charts showing exponential growth curves, but no actual data sources or historical performance records. The language was designed to sound sophisticated while saying nothing concrete. The most telling detail was buried on page 19, a disclosure statement in tiny print explaining that returns were projected and not guaranteed, and that participants should be prepared to lose their entire investment. In other words, it was gambling dressed up as a business opportunity. Over the next 3 days, Veronica called me 6 times. Each conversation followed the same pattern. She'd start by asking if I'd reviewed the materials, then gradually ramp up the pressure. Other family members were very interested. The expansion window was closing faster than expected. She really needed my expertise and support to make this work. Each call felt like being slowly squeezed by a python. On the 4th day, she tried a different approach. She called crying, her voice thick with what sounded like genuine despair, telling me about her mounting debts, her fear of losing her apartment, her desperate need for this business to succeed so she could finally become the sister you deserve. I almost broke. The little boy in me who remembered how she used to read me bedtime stories when our parents were fighting, who remembered the way she'd fiercely defended me against playground bullies, wanted to rescue her, but I forced myself to remember the pain she'd caused, the lies she'd told, the way she'd weaponized my love for her against me. I remembered sitting in my therapist's office, learning about trauma bonds and codependency, understanding for the first time that loving someone doesn't mean you have to enable their destructive behavior. Instead of sending money, I decided to do something else. I started reaching out to people in Veronica's network, old mutual friends, former colleagues, anyone I could find on her social media accounts who might be considering investing with her. It was a small circle. Veronica had burned through most of her relationships over the years, leaving behind a trail of borrowed money and broken promises. The responses were eye-opening. 3 people had already been approached with identical pitches. 2 had invested smaller amounts, $5,000 and $15,000 respectively, and were becoming increasingly concerned about the lack of returns or concrete information about what their money was actually funding. One had done his own research and concluded, like me, that it was a scam. I compiled everything I'd learned into a detailed report: the fake testimonials, the pyramid structure, the pressure tactics, the lack of legitimate business operations. I included screenshots of the stock photos, records showing when the domain was registered, and examples of the same content appearing on multiple scam websites. Then I sent it to everyone on my list, along with a personal note explaining my history with Veronica and my concerns about her current scheme. When Veronica called that Friday demanding to know why I hadn't made my investment yet, I was ready for her. "I'm not investing," I said simply. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. "What? Why not?" "Alex, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You're making a huge mistake. I'm making the right choice for me, and I've made sure others can make informed choices too." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more familiar. The mask was starting to slip. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean, I've shared my research about prosperity path solutions with everyone you've been targeting, the fake testimonials, the pyramid structure, the fact that your business license is 3 months old despite your claims of 8 months in operation." The transformation was instant and complete. The sweet, vulnerable sister was gone, replaced by the rage-filled woman I remembered from 6 years ago. "You self-righteous piece of shit," she snarled. "You've always been jealous of me, always trying to sabotage my success. Do you have any idea what you've done? Do you have any idea how much this could have helped people? I've protected people from being scammed by my own sister. Again. This was legitimate. This was my chance to finally make something of myself, and you've ruined it because you can't stand to see me succeed. You're pathetic, Alex. Sitting in your little apartment, working your little job, living your little life. At least I have vision. At least I try to build something bigger. Veronica, it was a pyramid scheme. You were asking people to pay thousands of dollars for worthless training materials and then recruit their friends to do the same. The only person who would have made money was you, from recruitment fees. Fuck you, Alex. Fuck you and your holier-than-thou attitude. You think you're so much better than me with your fancy job and your perfect little life, but you're just a bitter, lonely asshole who can't forgive his own family. You know what? I'm glad Mom and Dad are dead so they don't have to see what a heartless bastard you've become." That last line hit me like a slap. Our parents had died in a car accident 3 years ago, within months of each other. I'd been the one to handle all the arrangements, the one to deal with their estate, while Veronica had been too strung out to even attend the funerals. She was right about one thing: I was lonely sometimes. But I wasn't bitter anymore. I was free. "I hope you find a legitimate way to turn your life around," I said. "But it won't be by scamming the people who care about you." She hung up on me. I haven't heard from her since. The aftermath was swift and thorough. Within a week, all of her potential investors had backed out. The people who had already invested demanded refunds, and when Veronica couldn't provide them, they began exploring legal options. Her carefully constructed online persona crumbled as word spread through her network about the true nature of her business. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. If anything, I felt sad. Sad that she was still the same person who had disappointed me so many times before. Sad that she had chosen deception over genuine change. Sad that our relationship was beyond repair. There's a special kind of grief that comes with losing a family member who's still alive, a mourning for the relationship you'll never have, and the person they'll never become. But I also felt something else: relief. For 5 years I'd carried a nagging fear that Veronica might one day return to my life and drag me back into her chaos. Now I knew that I was strong enough to resist her manipulation, smart enough to see through her lies, and confident enough to protect not just myself but others from her predatory behavior. 3 months later, I received a promotion at work. Senior architect with a substantial raise and stock options. My boss Jennifer pulled me aside after the announcement to tell me that my reputation for integrity and careful analysis had been a major factor in the decision. "You have a gift for seeing through bullshit," she said with a smile. "That's invaluable in this industry." I celebrated with my chosen family, friends who valued honesty, colleagues who respected my expertise, neighbors who appreciated my quiet reliability, people who knew they could trust me because I'd proven, over and over, that I kept my word and protected the people I cared about. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, I found myself standing on my balcony with a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands. The city sprawled out before me like a circuit board. Thousands of windows glowing with warm light, each one representing lives being lived, choices being made, families gathering around dinner tables. I watched the traffic flow along the streets below, people heading home from work, from dates, from visits with loved ones, and I found myself contemplating the strange and complicated concept of family. For the longest time, really for most of my adult life until therapy helped me understand differently, I'd carried this deeply ingrained belief that sharing DNA with someone automatically created certain non-negotiable obligations. That blood relation meant you had to endure toxicity, that you were morally required to keep extending olive branches to people who had repeatedly demonstrated they would use those branches to beat you senseless. I'd thought that cutting off contact with family members made you cold, unforgiving, somehow deficient in basic human compassion. But through years of painful self-examination, countless therapy sessions, and the hard-won wisdom that only comes from being burned enough times, I'd learned something that would have sounded revolutionary to my younger self. Love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enablement dressed up in noble clothing. Somewhere out there in this vast urban landscape, Veronica was probably hunched over her laptop in whatever temporary living situation she'd managed to secure, her mind churning with plans for her next scheme, completely convinced that the world owed her something simply because she existed. I felt a brief, sharp stab of pity for her. Not the kind of pity that would make me reach for my phone or open my wallet, but the distant sadness you might feel for a stranger whose life had taken a series of wrong turns. She was trapped in a prison of her own making, surrounded by walls built from burned bridges and squandered opportunities, unable to form genuine human connections because she could only see other people as potential marks, as transactions to be exploited rather than relationships to be cherished. But my pity was tempered by something stronger: gratitude. Gratitude for the hard-won wisdom that had allowed me to recognize her manipulation for what it was. Gratitude for the strength to protect myself and others from her predatory behavior. Gratitude for the life I'd built without her toxicity clouding every interaction. I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting abuse. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's destructive behavior. Sometimes saying no to family is saying yes to your own well-being and the well-being of everyone else they might hurt. As I went back inside and locked the door behind me, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt or disappointed or hoping she might change. I was simply done. And for the first time in my life, being done with Veronica felt like the beginning of something beautiful, rather than the end of something painful. The next morning, I deleted her number from my phone and blocked her on all social media platforms. Not out of spite but out of self-preservation. I had learned the difference between holding a grudge and maintaining healthy boundaries. One keeps you trapped in the past, the other frees you to build a better future. I kept the flowers she had brought that first night. Not as a reminder of her manipulation, but as a symbol of my own growth. White roses for new beginnings. White roses for the courage to choose peace over chaos, truth over comfortable lies, self-respect over misplaced loyalty. Every time I looked at them, I remembered that I had the power to choose who belonged in my life. And for the first time in 36 years, I chose wisely. I chose myself.